Hey guys, it's Mrs. Beatty. Happy Monday. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 6, and then on Wednesday you guys are actually going to get a separate assignment for chapter 7. So, as always, the PDF is there if you want to read it by yourself, or if you want to read it with your parents or your brothers or your sisters, or you can listen to me read it to you. So, here we go. Chapter 6, A Giant World. The first thing I saw in the giant world was the sky. It was just like the other one in my world, big and blue, streaked with clouds, only the sun was in the wrong place. It was sun down below, but clearly it was a fresh dawn here. I guessed my day was this world's night, and my night was the world's day. Otherwise, everything seemed quite normal. Clouds, dirts, trees, rocks. Whoosh! Dragons! A dragon screeched and swooped down at me, talons outstretched. The beanstalk bent and twisted between the dirt ceiling and the blue until it found an opening at the that allowed it to grow upward, a hole so wide it could fit a giant. This must be a hole giants had come down through. It looked endless, with no light above, and my muscles ached with the thought of more climbing. Don't give up now, Jack, I said to myself. You haven't even gotten to the giants yet. Take courage. I climbed through the hole and up the beanstalk. The spot of blue below me began to darken until I could no longer see it. It must be night, but then at last a pinprick of light appeared above me. The top! I ignored the scream of my arms and legs and climbed faster. The opening at the top was small, just big enough for the beanstalk to push through, but far too small for a giant. It must have been covered up somehow. At last, I emerged from the hole. I pushed through some leaves and landed face down in the dirt, heaving and coughing and laughing. Ha ha! I made it! I was in a land beyond sky. Giants beware. I stumbled back into the beanstalk hole and wedged myself between the twisting vines. The dragon tore at the stalk and leaves with its dagger talons and curved beak. It flapped its wings, and a giant feather fell down through the hole. That's when I realized that it wasn't a dragon. It was a giant bird, an eagle, or a hawk. The bird screeched and shook at the vines. I curled into a ball and clutched at my ears. I'd been in the giant world for only a minute, and I was about to be torn apart by a giant bird. It wasn't fair. The tales of Grandpa Jack never said anything about giant birds. The bird screeched again, released the beanstalk, and flew back into the sky. It circled high above, waiting for me to emerge. After a few minutes, it gave up and soared out of sight in search of some other edible creature. I stayed in the tangle of the vines a while longer. I crept out of the hole slowly, looking side to side, up and down for any signs of predators. Now I knew how a mouse must feel. My heart beat as fast as a mouse's, too. Perhaps mouse hearts beat so fast because they're always frightened of owls or cats. I scurried to a tree and crouched behind it. The tree trunk bent and swayed. Weird. These trees didn't have rough bark, but were waxy and ribbed like celery. The tops didn't have leaves, but were round and white and fluffy like dandelions. They were giant dandelions. Of course, this wasn't just a world where giants lived, it was a giant world. I guess I should have figured that out by the giant beanstalk. Everything was giant. The hawks, the grass, the trees, and whoa, the bugs. A wood louse the size of a squirrel lay dead beneath one of the dandelions. It was rolled on its back with its many legs all shriveled and contorted. Even dead, it was terrifying. I imagined the delightful scream from Annabella if she were to find out that in her bed. Some distance away, I saw a real giant tree. I scurried over to get a better view of things. I couldn't reach the branches, of course, but the giant bark made perfect hand and footholds for climbing, like a series of paths on a wall. The tree was sticky with sap, which got all over my hands and made my nose and eyes itch with the spicy smell. A beetle the size of my head crawled out from under the bark. I held it as it scuttled over my hand, tickled my arm with its wiggly entity, and disappeared around the other side of the tree. Once I was high enough, I twisted around to see. A whole city spread out before me. Giant houses and shops lined the streets. Big plumes of smoke rose from the chimneys as tall and wide as my house. There were wagons the size of whales and giant horses pulling them. There were giants, not just one or two, but dozens and dozens, all milling around like ordinary people, except giant. Ho, ho, villainous giants! None shall escape the wrath of mighty Jack. I tried to speak the way Grandpa Jack did in the tales, gallant and brave. Directly across the road, there was a bakery with a giant loaf of bread and pie painted on the sign, and it reminded me of Baker Baker and his bakery that had been taken. I wondered where it could be now. What did giants need? What did giants need with a tiny bakery when they had a giant one of their own? A giant emerged from the bakery, dressed in fine robes and a plumed puffy hat. He was stuffing his face with pie. Dark juice slid down the side of his mouth. My stomach twisted, wondering what exactly was that pie? Blackberries? Blueberries? Or peopleberries? A giant peddler pushed a cart through the streets, calling out his sales for a day in a deep, booming voice that vibrated in my chest. We got roots, mushrooms, crickets, only 10 gold pieces for a dozen. 10 gold pieces for crickets? I could catch 100 in 10 minutes for free. But maybe crickets were rare in the giant world and full of luck or something, because the paddler was thronged with giants and they all opened their purses full of gold and poured into the paddler's hand. One giant man took a cricket right away and popped it into his mouth. He crunched the cricket between his giant teeth. His face twisted up and he didn't seem to think it tasted all that good, but he ate 2 more on the spot and patted his belly when he finished. That's better, he said. Giants eating crickets? At least it wasn't peopleberries. Speaking of people, I didn't see anyone my size, but there were so many giants. Way more than 9. There were big man giants with horses and wagons, women giants with baskets and carts, and child giants. I'd never considered that there were women and child giants before. All the giants in Grandpa Jack's tales had been brutish men, ogres. But men or women, ogre or not, one of those giants had taken Papa. Which one of you brutes took my father? I'll chop the villain's head off. No one seemed to hear me. Many of the giants were moving uphill, away from the shops. I watched them go up and up and up some more. And aha, at the top of the hill, there was a giant castle, so enormous I couldn't see the ends of it. Great towers rose into the sky, glistening in the morning sun like gold. In fact, it looked like they really were gold. Every part of the castle glowed with golden light, and I just lost my spot. It was so enormous I couldn't see the ends of it. Great towers rose into the sky, glistening in the morning sun like gold. In fact, it looked like they really were gold. Every part of the castle glowed with golden light, and the windows sparkled like great shining lakes. Papa had to be there. In the tales, the giants always kept their human captives in castles, towers, or dungeons. I would probably have to face many giants, maybe even more than Grandpa Jack, but that didn't matter. I was born for this. I could conquer them all with my axe and my wit and my bravery. Beware, ogres, to fall by the mighty hand of Jack. With a sudden crack, the bark I was holding onto broke off the tree and I tumbled to the ground, one step closer to my destination. I didn't think it was wise to reveal myself to the giants when there were so many at once, so I tried to stay hidden behind rocks or grass as I followed the road toward the castle. I soon realized that the giant... No, where'd it go? Uh-oh. Okay. I soon realized the giant world was incredibly barren. There was only a few patches of grass in the dusty ground and very little of it green. Whatever giant shrubs or flowers I came upon were either shriveled or full of holes and wilting as though ill. I noticed, too, that the trees had few leaves and their branches seemed to sag. It looked like the land was in a drought, except I saw plenty of streams and puddles, and warm air told me it wasn't winter. I guess the giant world was just brown. I climbed and climbed and climbed, and yet I seemed to make very little progress up the mountain. The castle was so high and far away. There had to be an easier way to get there. I watched the giants wend their way upward on carts and horses and by foot. I couldn't see much more than boots and skirts and wheels. The child giants were easier to see since they were closer to the ground. They had big, hungry eyes and great sharp teeth that gashed open and shut with a fearsome appetite. A giant little boy spotted me. "Ooh, Pixie, Pixie!" He charged after me with fat hands outstretched. The boy's mother grabbed his arms and yanked him away. "No, Gunther, don't touch the pixies. They'll bite you." Gunther stuck out his lip in a pout, but his mother carried him off. I let out my breath. Safe. Whatever pixies were, I was glad the giants didn't like them, and I looked like one. There must be creatures in this world that we don't have below. Just then, a strange creature waddled right by me. He was much smaller than the giants, maybe the size of a cat to them, but much bigger than me. He was twice the height of Papa and several times as wide, with stout legs, a round, chubby face, and a fat, bulbous nose like a squash. "Message for Ferdinand? Message for Ferdinand?" the creature chanted in a raspy voice. Whatever he was, he could talk, and he didn't look vicious or threatening. Maybe I could ask him for help. "Excuse me, sir," I called, but the creature didn't stop. He kept running and calling, "Message for Ferdinand? Message for Ferdinand?" I suppose the message was really urgent, but a few minutes later, another one of the creatures waddled by. This one looked like a girl, her hair in pigtails. "Message for Bertha! Message for Bertha!" she chanted. "Excuse me," I called. "I need some help, please. Could you help?" Now that I'd noticed the creatures, they were everywhere, but it seemed like they couldn't hear me. Another one passed, this time bearing a message for Gus, and then another for Isabel. All their messages seemed to be terribly important, but even those that were not chanting about messages wouldn't stop when I called for help. Unless... "Hey!" I called. "I've got a message! Message!" Sure enough, one of the creatures waddled straight towards me. This one had a little button nose and a wide mouth, like a toad. He wore tattered rags and no shoes. Down at me and blinked. "Message?" he said. "I'm looking for my papa. He's small, like me. Can you help me find him?" The creature just stared at me, then repeated my exact words in a croaky voice. "I'm looking for my papa. He's small like me. Can you help me find him?" He was taken by a giant? He was taken by a giant? He asked. "Yes. Do you have any idea where he could be?" "Yes. Do you have any idea where he could be?" "Stop repeating what I was saying and answer me." "Stop repeating what I was saying and answer me." "Hey, Pea-Brain, do you know anything?" "Hey, Pea-Brain, do you know anything?" I growled and kicked at the dwarf giant, whatever creature this was, not thinking about how he was still 3 times my size, could probably crush me. But he didn't do anything. I just stared blankly, as if our entire exchange had been forgotten. "Message?" I sighed. "My papa's name is Henry," and before I could say any more, the dwarf giant waddled off calling, "Message for Henry! Message for Henry!" "Wait!" I shouted, but the creature waddled with a backwards glance. "Message for Henry! Message for Henry!" So the pudgy giant dwarf creatures wouldn't be any help no matter. I didn't need help. Grandpa Jack faced a giant with 3 heads all on his own. Turning my attention back to the castle, I leaped high and grabbed onto the giant woman's skirt and hid myself between the folds. As the giantess walked back, I swung wildly back and forth like I was being thrashed about in gale. It was rather fun, and I was moving at a very fast pace, upward and onward until someone bumped into the woman. I lost my grip and went tumbling down the hill. Thumpity-bumpity until I came to a stop in the middle of a road. A hoof stomped down along the side of me, and a wheel rolled by the other. A long tail brushed over my head, and without second thought, I grasped at the coarse threads. Before coming to the giant world, I would have thought riding a horsetail would be no more threatening than hanging from a tree. But a tree only bends with the wind, while a tail has a mind of its own. It flicked me side to side, up and down. It was like hanging onto the end of a whip, and you never knew which direction it would go. I got dizzy. Giant flies buzzed in my face, and it smelled pretty awful, which shouldn't be surprising considering where the tail was placed. Once inside the castle gates, the horse halted, but the tail did not. The horse must have felt me because I got whipped around so violently it was impossible to hold on. I went flying, tumbled to the ground, and bounced and rolled until I came to a stop directly beneath the stone steps of the castle.